Once upon a time, two bulls who encountered each other in a field began fighting viciously for dominance. Near the field, there was a marsh. An old frog who had lived in the marsh all his life nervously watched as the bulls clashed. A younger frog passing by noticed the old frog trembling and stopped to see what was the matter. "What's going on?" the younger frog asked. "Why are you afraid of what's happening in the fields?" The old frog, without looking away from the fight, replied, "Can't you see that once they're done fighting, the loser will flee the fields and come here, trampling us into the mud?" The younger frog shrugged. "You worry too much. I'm sure there's nothing for us frogs to fear." He was about to turn away when suddenly the fight ended. Just as the old frog predicted, the defeated bull escaped into the sanctuary of the marsh, crushing all of the frogs who hadn't been paying enough attention to flee. The moral of the story is that when the powerful clash, others are bound to suffer. It may be entertaining to watch the battles of powerful people or nations, but those without power, or with far less power, should always keep in mind the potential for fallout, even if the fight seems to have nothing to do with them. In ancient times, when the story was written, the writer, the Greek slave Aesop, may have been reflecting on how city-states, constantly at war with one another, often displaced entire populations. The losers of these wars would become refugees, spilling into neighboring territories and causing chaos and misery for communities that had no involvement in the original conflict. This pattern has repeated throughout history. For example, the Goths, Visigoths, and Ostrogoths fled westward to escape the advancing Huns during the so-called Dark Ages. This mass displacement brought them into conflict with the Roman Empire, reshaping Europe's future, eventually leading to the sack of Rome. Likewise, during the Mfecane period in southern Africa in the early 1800s, smaller African tribes fled from the expansion of the Zulu kingdom and the Boer settlers, displacing others in turn and causing widespread upheaval. The term Mfecane, meaning the crushing or destruction in Zulu, is particularly fitting for this story as it vividly describes the devastating ripple effects felt by weaker groups, as is alluded to in the case of the frogs. Even today, little has changed. Waves of emigration are often caused by people being displaced by war. Consider the wars in Ukraine, Syria, or the many ethnic conflicts in Africa. These conflicts may seem far away, but they can create ripples felt by neighboring countries and beyond, whether through refugee crises, economic strain, or political instability. It can be tempting to dismiss the wars of others as irrelevant, and in some ways, they might be, in the sense that you may never directly experience the violence. However, wars have second and third order effects that can cause serious problems even for those who think they're safe from it all. If we aren't vigilant and prepared, we may find ourselves overwhelmed and crushed by the consequences of conflicts that we thought had nothing to do with us, like the frogs in the marsh. Anyway, that's all for today's fable. Thank you for listening, and if you enjoyed this story, please like, share, and subscribe for more. And while you're at it, ponder this question. Do you resemble a frog? Have you ever been hit with the fallout of a conflict that you thought would never have an impact on your life? Let me know in the comments, and I'll see you next time.